Welcome to the Healthspan Collective, the podcast where science and wellness converge. I'm Nicole Doran, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we dive into the world of regenerative medicine, integrative health, and the latest science and trends shaping how we live healthier for longer. Today's guest was super special. Dr. Christopher Shade, PhD, founder and CEO of Quicksilver Scientific, is a wealth of knowledge, to say the least. Dr. Shade is a leading expert in mercury toxicity, detox, and advanced nutrient delivery. He developed a patented mercury test and created groundbreaking nanoparticle systems that boost supplement absorption. Now he's expanding into liposomal delivery of peptides and hormone therapies, continuing to push the boundaries of modern health. Dr. Christopher Shade, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm happy to be here.
So you are on your way to A4M, the Palm Beach one. We will see you there tomorrow.
Yep.
And ironically, that's actually where I first learned about your brand, my first A4M conference.
Oh, when was that?
Probably 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2020 in December in Vegas.
Yes, just coming out of COVID.
Yes, just coming out of COVID. I was new to this industry, so I was drinking from a fire hose. Yep. But one thing I have to compliment you and your team on is your marketing and your branding. You do a really nice job.
Thank you.
And especially in the regenerative medicine industry, you know, you kind of have brands all across the board, but you all do a really fabulous job. And I'm someone that just, I'm very drawn to a brand that has clean, I should say you have very clean marketing. It's very easy to understand what you're doing.
Yeah, the aesthetic, has to match quality. And, it's almost like a luxury brand. It's such a high quality.
Yes.
But it's a medical brand. And I want that reflected in a nice, clean, clinical, but upscale look.
Yes. Well, you're achieving it.
I'm good.
So when did you start this brand? Because you're the founder and CEO, and you've always been the founder and CEO, correct?
Yeah. And so we started a long time ago, and, we started in 2006 as a company, but first we were doing environmental testing. Okay. Quicksilver and Quicksilver Scientific is the old European word for mercury. It means liquid silver.
Okay.
My PhD was in global mercury cycling and mercury biogeochemistry, and I developed this testing that specialized for separating forms of mercury, and I brought it into the medical world. So first we were doing environmental, and then we had the economic crash around 2008, 2009, and I first introduced all of these concepts into like the early mercury guys, Dietrich Klinghardt and Hal Huggins, and they were fast to pick it up. So we jumped into all clinical.
Okay.
And then we started bringing that to clinical. And A4M was it was holistic dental stuff like IOMT, but then really getting into functional integrative, it was A4M I started going to, which got me into longevity. So I've been coming to A4M since 2010. We used to have like a little table in the back. We would share it with people doing other stuff, and just kind of sneak in and then, have doctors meet them, even in our rooms, have like a little sweet thing. And then, we grew up and, now we're like, one of the main sponsors over there. So it's been a long road, but watching this evolution of longevity medicine, regenerative medicine, and what that really means. I used to think detox was for sick people. Like I'm just the trash guy. I take the trash out. And then as we evolved, I got to see all these triggers that we got to hit for detox are essential longevity triggers. And this NRF2, AMPK, sirtuin activation. And it's really central to a longevity program. And the toxins themselves, now they've come to call them gerontogens. These are, there was obesogens, things that make you obese, plasticizers and stuff. Now there's this general term, gerontogens, that toxins are accelerating aging. So not only are you taking age accelerants out, you're using the triggers that are regenerating your stem cells, getting those back online. There's senolytics. People talk about those. Yeah. I mean, it's all the same thing when you're doing proper detox. And so it's an essential part of longevity medicine.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I don't think it's talked about enough.
No.
At all.
No, it's kind of this nebulous thing. Oh, the toxins, and there's forever toxins now. People are talking more about those and microplastics and stuff, but they're not really linking them all together.
Right.
That it all has to be addressed at once.
Yes, 100%. And that's something, as I have watched you expand your product offerings over the years, it's been really lovely to see you really started with detox products, correct?
Yeah, totally.
And what was your first product?
It was Mercury Detox products. The
Okay.
first product was called IMD, Intestinal
Okay.
Metal Detox. And it
Okay.
was we all take binders now and like
Right.
activated carbon, and that binds certain stuff. But we made one hyper-specific for mercury, cadmium, and arsenic.
Okay.
And back when people had dental amalgams, the big problem was you swallow all this mercury
Right.
that's corroding off of the half mercury silver filling
Right.
and coats all the GI, and it blocks, it sort of shuts down the liver to GI path. And that's where you're dumping toxins into the GI. But the signaling from the GI is saying, we're coated in this mercury here, and you can't send any more down. So having a specific binder go in and clean that lining, and also take the forms of mercury that go out of the GI and get reabsorbed right away.
Right.
Really was a game changer in mercury detox. So we could get away from using DMSA and DMPS, these things that force everything out through your kidney.
Right.
And I had tried all this. I got all, I was kind of radical, and I got into this world, and I had 17 amalgams, and I had a guy take them all out in one day.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, all right, my job is going to be measuring how much is fish-based mercury, methyl mercury, versus the amalgam-based mercury,
Oh, wow.
inorganic mercury. I'll do that in challenge tests and in urine after you're doing chelation. And I'm taking all this DMSA, and really not much mercury is coming out. So I just kept taking more and more until I was just withering away. And then I'm like, wait a second, I think there's a fundamental problem. And then I'm introduced to these ideas of drainage from the kidney and liver and the glutathione system. We started, and I just changed, and I had this epiphany, like, how about I go through the gut?
Okay.
And I do the chelation that way. I do the
Right.
binding and pulling out. And that got me better in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And then I offered that up to these old stalwarts, the original guys. Huggins, he wrote a book on amalgam toxicity in 1972 called It's All in Your Head, like it's all in your mouth.
Right.
And they started using this. They're like, oh, it's a game changer. And then I figured out why it was working is that we had to get glutathione processes. That's glutathione in the cell, grabbing the mercury, transporters moving it into the blood, transporters moving it into the liver, and then dumping it through the liver, through the bile, into the GI, and then binding it down there. And so we had the perfect binder that re-linked the GI and the liver to start dumping.
Right.
Then we had to push from the cells. So we had to raise glutathione levels. We had to this trigger NRF2. And to get glutathione in, you can't just take capsules of that. You break it down. So we had to have this cheat for the bioavailability of the glutathione. How do you get it into the blood?
Right.
And that led us to liposomes.
Right.
And we looked at other liposomes out there, and I'm like, okay, this stuff is kind of goopy.
Can you describe what a liposome is
Yeah.
for those that don't know?
So a liposome, you make this little sphere out of phosphatidylcholine. Same things your cell membranes are made out of. So it's like a little microcell. And it's about 1,000 times smaller than a cell. And it's this bilayer membrane of phosphatidylcholine wrapping a drop of water. So you put glutathione in that water, it wraps around it, and then you take it in your mouth. If you make these right, like we do, real small, they'll absorb right through the mucous membranes in your mouth, into the capillaries, immediately go into circulation.
Right.
We can measure this stuff in 2 minutes after you take it.
Wow.
So it's not going through normal GI absorption.
Okay.
Whatever you swallow and don't get through the mouth will absorb through the stomach and upper GI. So it's a way to get past the need for transporters and a way to get past the enzymes that'll break things down in the gut. So it's a little sneak in and a protection. And you get this stuff into the blood right away, and you get delivery throughout the body, and liposomes even fuse into cell membranes and deliver to the cell.
Okay.
So boom, now we can get glutathione. And at first we used other people's products, and it was just like, this isn't working that well.
Right.
Tried one that worked pretty well, and I just wanted to make some changes to it, and they wouldn't do that. So I was like, if you want it done right, do it yourself.
Yep.
And I started obsessing on that, and there was a guy nearby who had all the equipment to analyze. See, everybody thinks you put the lecithin in a blender with the stuff and it makes the liposome. I was like, no. There's very sophisticated ways for looking at the sizes of your liposomes, the stability of the system. And I worked with him a little bit, just went through a couple of iterations, and he goes, all right, you're going to be the one. I'm like, what do you mean the one? He goes, do you know how many supplement companies? He never told me this. He goes, you know how many supplement companies come to me and are like, oh, can you analyze these liposomes we're looking at? Can you make us a liposome? He's like, oh, this stuff's garbage. He goes, you made the first perfect ones.
And is this a supplement developer? Is this...
It was a guy who makes equipment that looks at stability of different emulsions, and that can be a liposome or it can be an oil and water emulsion. I mean, he may be looking at detergents for Procter and Gamble. He may be looking at pharmaceuticals for the pharma companies, or he may be looking at liposomes. And he sold me some of his old equipment, and really got me on my way. And so it started out with glutathione, and then we made GABA and vitamin C, and then we started making EDTA with lipoic acid. So that was this detox stuff. And then we started making really sophisticated, complex systems where we've got like 6 different compounds in there. And we started getting into all these things like the polyphenols, like quercetin, resveratrol, these things that work on detox, and they work on these other like AMPK. That AMPK is what you activate when you go on a keto diet or if you fast or carb restrict. And we got some of these things that everybody uses, resveratrol, quercetin, diethylmethane, berberine. Mm-hmm. In a little particle, you're doing 40 milligrams of each and 12 of berberine. Mm-hmm. And 1 teaspoon of this, and you're off to the races. You're making blood ketones in like 30 to 60 minutes.
Wow.
Because you come in with all these compounds that hit these triggers from different angles, might support other stuff at the same time, and they get all into the blood and peak in the blood in 20 minutes.
Wow.
And so this thing that would take you 4 or 5 hours, and one compound would go in fast, and one slow, one super slow, nothing's all coming to bear on the problem at the same time. Okay. Now you put them all together, we call it biosynchronous activation. All these little biology modulators all get into the cell all at once, and boom, you really hit these triggers and you really move the needle, and then they move out. So because you can get everything, all your different compounds in at the same time, you can really affect things. And that's why we have this push catch liver detox, back to the detox.
I've used that product, the push catch. I had mold toxicity last year, and it really helped.
Tons of that for mold. And that's got... it used to be things like liposomal glutathione. Now, in one bottle, you have a whole bitters program that's activating bile flow.
Because can you explain, because you have the liver sauce, it's a dual product system.
So push catch, the base of it is liver sauce and binder.
Right.
And liver sauce has a couple different programs, I call it.
Right.
So it's got the ingredients for the bile flow.
Right.
One of the things we really brought out, it was an old naturopathic thing, is bile flow is where the toxins leave your liver into your GI. It's also a digestive thing, but it gets locked up so easily.
Right.
So mold locks it, stress locks it, estrogen dominance locks it, endotoxin, inflammagens lock it. So you got to open that up and couple the movement of the toxins from the cells out into the blood, to the liver, through the bile.
Okay.
And then bind it in the GI. So the liver sauce has the bile movers, has the NRF2 upregulators. NRF2 is this trigger in the cells to turn up all the machinery to throw the toxins out. Mm-hmm. And we have some mast cell stabilizers, so you don't wind up mast cells and inflammation while you do that, because that blocks the detox.
Right.
So you have all this program to mobilize, get to the liver, open the liver, dump from the liver, and then you come in with your binder.
Got it.
And then you can tack other liposomes on it. So you want some glutathione in there. You want some kidney support in there. Take all the liquids. And because everything peaks in 20 minutes, in 30 minutes you take your binder.
Right.
And then it gets down to the GI. It takes all the toxins that are dumping from the bile that you just triggered to move down there, binds them all up so you don't reabsorb them.
Right.
And it ties that cycle in a nice little bow.
Right.
Because people knew about binders, but if you take all these capsules and one's getting in an hour and a half and one's taking 5 hours, like, when do you take your binder?
Right.
And your body's signaling like this all over the day. What do I do? What do I do?
Right. And if you're taking other supplements and you're eating throughout the day, it's like, I always thought that with charcoal capsules, you're like, I don't know how long this is going to take to absorb into my gut.
Yeah, so we take all the liposomes, everything goes into the blood. Half hour later, take your binder, bind everything up. Half hour after that, you eat or you keep fasting. Okay. But you tied that in a nice little bow. Right. Move, catch, push, catch, really clean.
Right.
We figured this out heavily when we were working on autism.
Really?
Hardest kids to detox.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We had like 13-year-olds on full adult detoxes.
Really?
Because they have all this neurological neuroinflammation that's signaling all these things and locking up the liver. That's why they get so full with toxins. So we would give them CBD first. calm down that neuroinflammatory thing, break that. We'd either use CBD, GABA, or a combination of two to relax the neuroinflammation that lets the body let down. Then you push, catch, tie it all up, and they tolerated full-on detoxes.
Wow.
And then that little cycle, that's a little microcosm of a detox cycle. You can do that once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day.
Okay.
You do half dose, full dose, double dose, triple dose. And we titrate people up. And
you titrate
it's
up.
so much more tolerable. So we
Okay.
can go to really, really strong doses that move the needle, but nobody has those, oh my God, I'm having a detox reaction. Herxheimer reaction. You know what that is?
I do.
That's an excuse for an improper detox. Real Herxheimer reactions are really only when you go in and kill a whole bunch of stuff at once, like antibiotics and stuff.
Right.
And so what happens with the liver, if you don't open up that path of drainage from the liver through the bile, the liver starts pulling in toxins that you mobilized. It builds up in the liver. Liver sees there's no way out, and it back flushes and dumps everything back into the blood.
Okay.
So the toxins are moved, brought into the liver, and then squirted back out, where then they go to the kidneys. But the same thing happens there, and they get blocked up. So you get lower back stress. They go out, they start coming through the skin. At first you have itching. You'll see a lot of itching when people are detoxing if they don't have the bitter compounds in there.
Okay.
That's bile salts getting kicked back into the blood, and they lodge under the skin.
Wow.
Long before you get jaundiced, you're getting bile salts over there, and they itch. Then the toxins start coming out through the skin and affect the immune system. You get rashes.
Okay.
They're going to the brain, and you got all this brain fog, and that's winding up, and that's neuroinflammation turning up from the inflammagens like endotoxin in the blood and the toxins. And when the inflammation winds up, the blood-brain barrier opens up, and all this stuff goes in and hits the glutamate receptors, and the microglia gets you into neuroinflammation, gives you brain fog, anxiety, depression, and you're like, oh, I feel like crap from this detox. Like, you do a detox right, you're just going to feel better.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, you might go through like 1 or 2 days, where you're a little,
You're feeling
until
a
the
little,
whole
foggy.
thing rubs. But people think that they have to be like that forever.
Right.
And, if you do it right, you're going to have minimal or no symptoms, and you're just going to start feeling better.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's really important for people to know that if
and that's why, the doctors who come have done other systems that are like, this is, 12 months to get people feeling better. It's like, they're like, I can do all that in like 2 to 3 months with your system.
Yeah. I was going to say, so how long of a protocol do you typically recommend for a patient? Like, how long should someone be on a push couch?
Yeah, kind of depends what they're looking at inside, what their pathologies are.
Okay.
Say
someone knows they're dealing with mold.
Mold's a little slow.
Okay.
You're generally about a 3-month protocol.
Okay.
Some of the deep metals and mold, and they got some Lyme, you're looking at 6 months because you got to pick off a couple of things.
Got it.
But even if you do the 2-week system, you're going to feel good.
Right.
And then we have this core 1-month system. It's like, try that out. That clears so much stuff up. Like, you do regenerative here, and you're doing PRP, you're doing autologous stem cells. If you clean the terrain up first, which is not just the cellular space, but the extracellular space, then all that signaling from the stem cells, or if someone's going on hormones, all that is going to work so well. When there's all this junk mucking up the matrix, the signaling doesn't work right.
Right.
And so even a 2-week before you do that is good. But, the 1-month advanced push catch is sort of like where I like to start people.
Okay.
And then I'll usually take them 2-3 months, unless it's a deeper problem, and then they can keep going. And there's also, I always say you need a formal detox, and then you need to incorporate it in your lifestyle.
I was just about to ask. So you do this 3-month detox, then what?
Then what? Then you got to choose your own adventure.
Okay.
Some people I have my formal detox. I do it, 1 month every 6 months, or 1 month every year, or 2 weeks every quarter. I like to, ride you, 2-3 months on, big full-on systems, and then take it to a more minimalist thing for another month or 2. Okay. And then I want you to incorporate.
Would that be like a liposomal glutathione?
It'd probably be just like, maybe just the liver sauce and the binder But
Okay.
in the beginning, you got liver sauce, kidney care, this kidney drainage. You got phosphatidylcholine
I
source for
see.
membranes. You got a glutathione, maybe some vitamin C, and then we'll
I see.
bring it down to
so
a
it's a
more
full
more
system.
minimalist. Yeah.
Okay.
And you might have EDTA in the beginning,
Okay.
and then you go down to minimalist for a while, and then you incorporate into your lifestyle. Like if you have a sauna, I have a sauna at my house. In fact, in my bedroom, it's like core to my life, and so I'll be on the road doing all this stuff, exposed to all this stuff. I'm in the airplanes, I'm out to restaurants, I'm drinking with people. I get back, and then it's like before I go back to work, push sauna catch. So I'll take liver sauce, a couple other things, jump in my sauna, and then do the binder. And
I love that.
Having any of those modalities in that 30-minute window is so good. Sauna's my favorite, but there's so many. You might do red light therapy, you might do PEMF, you might do a foot bath, and so I'll do like 2-3 days of that cleanup and then be done. I might be doing some on the weekend. Bitters are so underrated. We have 2 bitters formulas, and they come in these pretty pump bottles.
Okay.
And like Natalie brought me here. You'll see, she got one in her purse, and I have her doing that all through the day, you know, because people's gallbladders get really locked up. It's that transition moving from the liver into the bile ducts and on down. That gets all locked up in our lifestyle these days, and especially women. So
why is that?
Yeah, so women. Estrogen signaling, when estrogen is outpacing progesterone, it locks that up too.
So when you have estrogen dominance.
Yeah, estrogen dominant locks that up. Like any glutamate activity in the brain will lock that up. So glutamate is sympathetic, it's glutamate and GABA are your 2 main neurotransmitters. Glutamate is excitatory and GABA is calming and inhibitory.
Right.
And glutamate makes you on it, has memory and stuff, but it also winds up anxiety and fight or flight activity.
Right.
And so we're constantly locking. But estrogen hits that receptor too, or it activates the glutamate signaling.
Right.
So when you're when you're estrogen dominant, you lock up that gallbladder. That's why women have more gallbladder removals than men heavily. And that's why when we're working on women, especially perimenopausal women, you're trying to get their liver to open up, a lot of progesterone. Because estrogen works at the glutamate side, makes you a little locked up.
Yeah.
And progesterone works on the GABA receptors and
Calms
chills everything up. And it opens up the liver. And if you taste it, it's super bitter.
Okay.
And so you're working with these signals, trying to balance the signals and always open up. So as a lifestyle thing, bitters with your meals, it helps you digest, but it keeps that detox running all the time. Having binder around, maybe taking some before bed. Let it clean up through the night.
Before bed.
Okay. And remember I said detox and longevity go together?
Yeah.
There was this study done at the Russian Institute of Gerontology, done a long time ago, like 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
And this is where Cavinson came from, the bioregulator peptides like epitalin and thymolin. And they did all that longevity work and all-cause mortality. Same institute. These guys just took mice, aged them to maybe like a 40-year-old person.
Yep.
And then for the rest of their life, 40, 50, the rest of their life, one group they gave charcoal to 10 days a week.
Okay.
And the other one's not. The mice they give charcoal to lived an average of 43% longer than the ones they didn't.
That's significant.
Yeah, and the maximum lifespan was 34% higher. Really significant, not like 5% longer. I mean, like what? And so they take apart the mice and they look in there and they said their lysosomal activity was totally different because they had a third organ of detoxification that was cleaning things. Lysosomal activity is autophagy.
Okay.
So detoxing is tied to autophagy.
Right.
So you're moving the toxins out and you're signaling for the body to tear up old broken cells and recycle them and move some of that trash out. So you're giving it the path to unload your garbage and in doing so, turn over old cells, old mitochondria, damaged endoplasmic reticulum, and you're regenerating the system. That's simple, just a binder.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so this is all really hitting home for me. I want to walk you through a little bit. I mentioned mold toxicity, but it was part of a much larger, longer journey that I'm still on for the past 1.5 years, and maybe you can explain it because I know it's not unique to me. Allie, our producer in the room, has had a very similar journey, and a ton of our patients here at Pureform, I'm hearing it over and over. So beginning of 2024, about a year and a half ago, I got the worst, what I thought was flu of my life. I tested for COVID and it was negative. It was probably just a different variant. And it happened to be the week of my wedding. And
fun.
Yeah. So usually, obviously I work here. I know enough to be dangerous. I would say like no antibiotics, no, like let's do a more natural route. But I was in a rush to get better.
Yep.
So I did everything I could in addition to a vitamin IV every day, that kind of stuff. So I was on Claritin D for a couple of weeks because then I was on my honeymoon. And as I got off of it, I was like, okay, I'm not sick anymore. I'm getting off of this. Over the next few weeks, I developed this crazy histamine response where after I ate anything with a carbohydrate, I would start sneezing like 20 times.
Yeah, mast cell activation syndrome.
Yes, it turned into mast cell activation syndrome. And then my hormones started to just like go all over the place.
Yeah, just all wonk.
Yeah, estrogen dominance through the roof. And then my thyroid like plummeted.
Yeah.
So both the hormone imbalance and the thyroid imbalance are things I've lightly dealt with in the past, but I had never felt this extreme of the symptoms associated with those. And obviously I did tons of blood work. I did every functional medicine test in the book. Like we did a mold test, we did a DNA test. I did have some high mold. I thought maybe it was the coffee I was drinking that was causing all this.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a marketing thing. Nobody's got massive mold levels from their coffee.
Yeah.
They might react to it a little bit, but
yeah. Well, I do notice now, like when I drink a conventional coffee, it elevates my symptoms a little bit, but that wasn't the cause of all of this. But can you explain, because I was having a hard time having any of my functional medicine practitioners connect the dots from this virus to this crazy mast cell activation syndrome to this hormone imbalance, thyroid imbalance, and gut issues that all seemed to just be this domino effect.
A lot of people, let's assume it was COVID. And post-COVID, there's this total immune dysregulation. One of the things, you have a lot of dormant latent viruses come up, like the herpes family viruses live in you forever.
Right.
Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, those are herpes viruses.
Right.
I forget, is that like 4 and 7 or 5 and 7 because there's herpes 1, 2, right up through 30.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
And then 6 is in the central nervous system. 95% of the people have it. The Epstein-Barr and cytomegalovirus, maybe a little lower, but 80 plus.
Right.
And so post-COVID, it does something to the immune system where it propagates this inflammatory reaction towards COVID, even though it's not even there, and ignores these other viruses.
Right.
And they start reactivating and sending the system out of control in its inflammatory responses.
Okay.
And that seems to catch fire. So your immune system starts winding up all this inflammation. It's not controlling things. You start getting dysbiosis in your GI because the immune system controls the GI microbiota more than anything else.
Right.
And so it's inflaming against stuff it doesn't even know, what it is. And you get all this non-specific inflammation called Th2 response. Specific is, I try to kill that virus. Non-specific is, oh my God, what's that? It's not me. It's like, the same thing you've been eating for 20 years and it was fine and now it's no good. Yes. It's this stuff in the air, same air you were breathing and now it's no good. And it's a look from the other person, like I'm allergic to your look. Like everything, everything's setting me off here. And it's a bit of a mystery, where it shifts, but we know some of the things we want to do to bring it back. So these peptides like thymosin alpha-1, thymulin, then some of them like copper GHK, ergothioneine. These are these compounds that bring the inflammatory patterns back to balance.
Okay.
And so not everything's setting you off all the time. And then, you're trying to calm the mast cell activation. But while all that inflammation's running around, you've blocked all your detox.
Right.
We say the liver's just shut down.
My liver enzymes went through the roof. And if you were to evaluate everybody that I'm like, I'll keep a food diary for a week. Like,
Yeah,
I don't drink. Like, it's
where's
like,
that bottle of vodka? You look like you're doing a fifth a day. It's like,
Literally.
no, I'm not. Yeah,
Yeah.
and because that all gets locked up in this inflammatory pattern, all this damage happens, and then every toxin you're exposed to, you're accumulating as well as reacting to it.
Right.
And it's just a total shit show.
Right.
And so then you're taking things to calm the system. And so these mast cell stabilizers, quercetin, luteolin, vitamin C to break down the histamines, diethylmethane, which is for people think of it for estrogen metabolism, actually pulls back that TH2, TH17 is this other runaway inflammatory response, brings you T regulatory dominance. That's like harmony, immunotolerance. So we're trying to pull you back to immunotolerance, trying to shift your thymus and your immune regulation back to calm and pull out all these toxins that are accumulating and propagating everything.
Okay.
And also heal your vascular system. Your spike protein and the inflammation is just tearing apart your vascular system, and then that's getting leaky, and the stuff's getting in, the barrier function's breaking, and the stuff's leaking into the extracellular matrix and propagating all this. So it's like we got to like crutch you up, stabilize you, calm things down, and it's calming in the brain and the immune system. And a lot of these things like CBD, GABA, there's cannabinoid receptors in your brain, of course, but they're also in your immune cells. So your mast cells and your macrophages have GABA receptors and cannabinoid receptors. So we're using that to calm. These are tricks we learned in treating autism. We're using that in this mast cell activation, this post-COVID immune hyperdysregulation. We've seen that, before, and like Lyme and mold was the original, model for that. And once the immune system's primed, they call it immune system priming. It's primed for Lyme symptom. And the Lyme symptoms are all immune reactions. And so post-Lyme, you've killed all the Lyme, and then something generates inflammation. I mean, you could fall and hurt your elbow, and you have your Lyme disease back. You eat some gluten, and my gluten gave me Lyme disease. It's the immune patterning. So you got to repattern the immune. And we always knew that. We're getting better and better with that. But then all this post-COVID stuff came, and that's that crazy immune patterning towards COVID just keeps going that direction. So it's really a mess. And then if you've reactivated dormant viruses, or maybe there's mycoplasma and they're dormant, there could be dormant Lyme, and then you have to deal with those too. So it becomes this it's a messy situation. We got to stabilize everything, and eventually your immune system gets back into being normal, controls the bad guys, doesn't react to everything around you. But there's this whole calm the system, drain all the toxins, kill all the things that have been reactivated, while we're signaling the thymus immune system to get back on track.
So calming would be the first step.
Yeah.
And peptides would be the place to start with that?
Well, so you'd be using things like the quercetin, luteolin, the cannabinoids as part of those are sort of the botanical and biochemical calmers. Then the peptide signaling, there's the thymolin, the copper GHK, the thymosin alpha-1, those are going to work at that level.
Got it.
Yeah, eventually you put exosomes back in, but that's sort of like emergency inflammation. You can bring it down, but it's better you clean up a little bit first and then get them to really drive in and establish. You got to establish this new rhythm. So
So I know you had mentioned before we started recording that you have a clinic associated with Quicksilver in Colorado, correct?
Yeah, Ready Natural Medicine.
Ready Natural Medicine, awesome. And you're not the practitioner, you're a PhD, correct?
Right.
Okay, so but you work with a practitioner there?
Yeah, he's a naturopath, and there's a nurse practitioner there, and he runs all of our systems, to clean people up. But now we have the EBU, the Hemolumin, they do peptides, exosomes, do facial stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have a lot of crossover with what we do here at Pureform.
Oh yeah,
which is awesome.
I mean, you took me around. I was looking at all those machines, and then I was at Dr. Purita.
Yes.
Yeah. And because I saw that little, you put the PRP in that
Pure
little,
light.
Yeah, the pulsed light. I'm like, I want one of those.
Yeah, we'll have to hook you up with one of those. Definitely.
Like you got the newer tech from the Hemolumin company.
Yeah, from
I'm
ALD.
like, I want that.
Yeah, we're their distributor, so we can hook you up for sure. But yeah, okay. And so for like if anybody's listening and they're like, I've had a similar journey or I've had something similar but different going on, would you direct them to your clinic, or is there a practitioner straight through Quicksilver to get recommendations on like which products are right for them?
Our clinic is really good there, and there's been a whole bunch of doctors who've gone through. We have online learning management systems.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you should get a doctor account and go in and check out the education. So there's a whole long system just in these 20-minute chunks, all these videos taking you through toxin testing and the whole detox system.
Okay.
And people have gone through that. It's called Quicksilver Academy Quicksilver Institute, QSI. And then we give you a stamp and put you on our doctor finder. And
oh, awesome.
And so you can look for people near you that use our systems, have been trained on our systems. And then we did the whole female hormone system.
Yeah, I want to talk about your female hormone system.
Oh my God, it's just amazing. And that's all in supplement form.
Okay.
Because of these nano deliveries, there's FDA laws allowing a certain amount of supplements and cosmetics, or a certain amount of hormones and cosmetics. So we do topical nanoserum delivery of progesterone and estrogen, and then oral delivery of the androgens.
Okay.
And there's a whole learning management system for that. So people who are new to hormones, it demystifies that a lot, because it gets, people create a lot of complexity to carve out, like only I can do it. There's a lot of that out there. And it's at the core, it's not that hard. But then we have these clinical consultants that talk to the doctors and walk them through these things. And we have one specialized in hormones. She was for 30 years at Women's International and knows all those. We got our detox specialists, and they help the doctors really dial this stuff in. Okay. So we can set you up with our people for consults and telemedicine, but we can find you a doctor near you. Okay. And, if your case is complex, they can consult with us on how to approach it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely set up those accounts. We have 3 integrative provider mid-level practitioners here. So they'll all be
You'll get so much use out of all of our stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then I'm sure we can just order and drop ship products to patients.
Drop shipping, usually we do that on a full script.
Okay, even better.
Right.
Yeah, we use, it's so easy to just streamline everything through full script whenever possible. Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit about your female hormone products, because I was learning a little bit about them and I'm so intrigued. It sounds like your DHEA especially can make such a big difference.
Such a difference. And it's everybody's like, DHEA, take 10 milligrams. Above that, you'll look like a Wookiee and you'll grow all this hair and acne and stuff. And I'm like, okay, guys, let's look at this a little different. So you do these nanoparticle deliveries.
Right. And it's all topical creams?
No. Some are oral.
Okay.
And so on the androgen side, that would be DHEA and then testosterone. In the DHEA product, we have pregnenolone, which is the mother hormone. And that's really functionally in the body. Yeah, it cascades into all these things. It elevates progesterone. But think of it more like adrenal support, and it's a neurosteroid. So it's helping brain and adrenals. It's sort of a core hormone. And then the DHEA in there. And then we put 2 nutraceuticals, DIM and Chrysin. Okay. DIM to help with the estrogen metabolism, and also calm the immune, and the Chrysin to be an aromatase inhibitor, which only works in a nanoparticle. You can't take it as a capsule and get there. And we'll talk about the nanoparticle difference in this. One is that the Chrysin actually works as an aromatase inhibitor, because DHA in women gets pushed into testosterone very easily. Right. So we'll use 50 to 100 milligrams a day. Wow. And almost nobody has androgenic symptoms, the acne, the hair growth, the hair loss, because in these nanoparticles, it goes right into the system. It doesn't all slam into the liver. You do a capsule, everything blasts in the liver. It's like going through the super collider, and all these metabolites, these androgenic metabolites come out. Once we're not even measuring, and I think those are making all these heavy androgenic symptoms while lightly elevating testosterone. So we'll take your DHEA up to between 500 and 1,000. And super physiologic levels of DHEA are fine. People are used to looking at this 100, 200. Like, no, DHEA dominant people like me and my son were DHEA dominant. My son's 25, his DHEA is like 550 without taking anything. Wow. And that's how I used to run. Now at 56, without taking anything, I'm 350 to 400. So, and all the studies on high DHEA, everything's fine. But when you take these supplements, again, they hit your liver, they make all these negative things. The nanoparticle goes right in. You're running 500 to 1,000 in DHEA. And your testosterone, depending upon your dose, it's a linear increase with dose, will be anywhere between 50 and 100, top of the reference range. And so you're running high DHEA, high testosterone, and the crisis is keeping you from making any estrogen out of it. And we've tested this. We've done 20-person tests. Nobody's making estrogen. Maybe a 1% increase. And then you control because I want you to control your estrogen separately.
Right.
And your ratio between estriol and estradiol.
Okay.
So people who are worried about breast cancer will keep you a minimum estradiol,
okay,
but lots of estriol.
Okay.
Because estriol, a lot of the symptoms you're working at are pelvic floor symptoms. So
right.
pelvic floor prolapse, chronic UTIs, vaginal atrophy.
Right.
That's all. Estriol does every bit as good as estradiol on that because estrogen receptor beta is what's all through the pelvic floor.
Okay.
Then brain, muscle, breast, cardiovascular is estrogen receptor alpha, which is estradiol. Okay. So you can have just enough estradiol to do that without worrying about over-signaling estradiol while you load in estriol to do all this stuff. And estrogen receptor beta and estriol are actually anti-proliferative. So the estrogens come in either a straight estriol, straight estradiol, or a biased. Okay. And those are topical.
Okay.
And topical, it's a nanoserum that you're putting on. It can be on the arms, the thighs. All the estrogens are actually best vulval, and all the old data on that is best vulval and intravaginal. And then the progesterone is also a nanoserum.
Okay.
And you put that, wherever you're going to put that.
Okay.
And you got to get that balance. And then people get thrown off by the dosages. We're like, 12 to 20 milligrams does everything. People are like, what? No, you have to put 80. I'm like, the creams that people use. Yeah. None of it's, some of it's dissolved, but they have the micronized and would you use micronized progesterone? Use yam-based stuff. And it's like, you don't really understand that. Micronized is just grinding up so far because in your creams, it's not actually all dissolved. You have little crystals of progesterone in a cream base and a little bit's dissolving into the cream base and getting sucked in. The rest is this fine dust layer on here. Yeah. And you look at it in a microscope, you can see the emulsion droplets and you can see these crystals in there. Wow. Ours is totally transparent. You look at a microscope, everything's dissolved. Every bit of the progesterone is in the nanoparticle. And these are transdermal nanoparticles. So you put them on and boom. And so you don't need to have such a high dose. And we can measure the things in the blood. You do a 24-hour urine, you are full. Wow. And so you're doing all the androgens and the pregnenolone through this DHEA plus. Okay. And then topical progesterone, topical estrogens.
That's awesome. And you can do all of this without prescriptions.
Yeah. Now, the estradiol and the higher dose ones, we have a direct-to-consumer that's like a lower dose line. Right. And then the higher dose and the pure estradiol, that's doctor only, but it's no prescription. Okay. Nothing goes to a compounding pharmacy. Okay. We sell these delivery systems to compounding pharmacies and teach them how to use them. We can't do testosterone. That's a controlled substance. Right. So you go there. In fact, I do the sublingual nanoparticle testosterone and a little bit of a topical nanoserum testosterone. Oh. And we're actually helping all the compounding pharmacies make the GLPs in non-injectable forms.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So we do all these peptides and these nanoliposomes, and you can do similar to injection. Now, you just have to go to a slightly higher dose. So in the Quicksilver line, we do all the naturally occurring. So we're doing copper GHK right now. Right. In a month, we'll have BPC with KPV and BPC with TB500. And then we're going to have the bioregulators, epitalin, thymolin, Vilon.
That's amazing.
We'll do all that through the Quicksilver line. And then these things that were lab-derived, like the GLPs, they were built to hit the target very well. And they're semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, amazing effects in people. We're not going to work with them, but they will. And now the drug company's like, no, you can't inject that stuff anymore. It's like, okay, we made a sublingual. And so basically, it's going to cost about the same for the patient, but daily they're going to do a sublingual dose. It's similar to or a little less than their weekly injectable dose. Wow. But they never have to have a needle again. And you don't have to have this stuff made in sterile, injectable facilities.
Okay.
Compounding pharmacies, we give them the materials to make the liposome there.
Okay.
So you're going to see through the compounding pharmacies these oral GLPs being,
so you're working
being available, and we design all that. So we're like an intellectual property company.
Right.
We're an innovation company.
Yeah.
It's like when cannabis was the big thing, we made nanoemulsions of THC and CBD, and we designed the THC beer and all the THC drinks for Molson Coors' venture in Canada. And so in the background, we've been, making all this intellectual property and supporting all this, nanoparticle delivery into all these different worlds. And now we're heavy into the compounding world.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you're working directly with the compounding pharmacies to develop these? No.
Yeah. Well, we develop them.
You develop
and then we show them how to use it. So they, like in the hormone world, they put the testosterone in. They may put pregnenolone, progesterone, estrogen. They have this whole compounding using our nanoparticle delivery.
Right. Okay. I
So we
understand.
license it to them. We sell them the raw materials and the system and teach them how to put it together.
Right.
So then for GLPs, we built a system for them to use for GLPs.
That's awesome.
And they could put, somorolins, growth hormone stimulators. They could put NAD in there. We made them recipes for putting all the different things they compound together in with their GLPs.
Okay.
Then over in our factory, we make the natural peptides, the naturally occurring ones. KPV, TB, BPC, you'll make all those things. We just don't make enough. And as we get older, we're making less and less. So all those we'll make and sell as supplements. All these are prescribed through compounding pharmacies.
Right. And so will you have like a pharmacy finder or a doctor or a way to connect to your doctors?
Totally going to have a pharmacy finder, and we're going to have an online platform for them to put prescriptions straight through to the pharmacies. They'll just sort of like full script. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what I want. This pharmacy to go to. Here's the patient. It'll be a link from us, and it'll just drive right through, and they'll use our technology to make the drugs that you want compounded and sent to your patient.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
That makes it part of, the funny part of being in the functional medicine or integrative medicine industry is there's so much great information out there.
Yeah.
But a lot of companies lack the technology to connect from beginning to end of having all this great information and then making it available
and
to
then you
the
go out
patient.
into the jungle and try to find it.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's the guava tree? He told me there's a bottle of liposomal guava in it. And so now it's like, no, these pharmacies have the tech down.
Right.
I'm working with them. It all works right. So I'm telling you to use this, and there they are.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So interesting. Okay, so you've got a lot on your plate.
Got a lot going on. Yeah, there's a lot happening.
Because you guys are tackling detox, hormones, peptides. Did I miss any categories?
Well, cardiometabolic stuff, blood sugar regulation, NAD processes, senolytics, and then we have the whole peptide world, and we're starting to put exosome growth factors into liposomes, so we're doing that too.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah. Your sublingual exosomes.
Sublingual exosomes. I've never even heard of that.
Well, that's because it hasn't existed yet.
Yeah, it doesn't exist yet. Wow. Where do you have you always just been an innovator?
Yeah. That's just my nature.
Yeah.
I'm like a mystical scientist. It's like Natalie always jokes. It's like he hides all this stuff. I just got back from Nepal, and I was an organic farmer. In fact, I was a biodynamic farmer. It's like this mystical soil sorcery before I was a chemist. And so I've always had that right left brain going on, and like you kind of see the chemistry. And then you're like, that really should work that way. You start playing around with it. It's working right. Then you start researching, and, then you find all the rationale for it. Then you tune it more to get like right into the mechanism and get the best results. And you just get to the goal much faster.
Wow. It's very impressive. Very, very impressive. Usually people specialize in one area and really stick to that. You're really tackling it all. Where is the best place for people to find you or just Quicksilver? Yeah,
so Quicksilver Scientific online. You're going to see some stuff, just coming to the site. There'll be a little education on each of the products. But if you're a practitioner, just get an account.
Okay.
Even if you buy from FullScript or somewhere else, once you're logged in to the pro page, boom, everything opens up. There's all of our, 40 webinars that are on there, hour and a half of each of these topics. There's the online learning management system with the courses there. There's the tech briefs on everything. That'll be where the portal is to link up to the compounding pharmacies.
Okay.
So that's where the wealth of information is. There's a good amount for consumers, but much more for the doctors. And then Instagram, Quicksilver Scientific is there, and Dr. Christopher Shade is more my personal stuff. You'll see me up with monks in the the Himalayas and stuff, and you'll see me going to things like this. And so yeah, those are the general ways, and there's lots of old stuff on YouTube talking about detox.
That's awesome. So you get really into the spiritual side of things as well as the scientific.
Yeah, I actually there's a Tibetan monk that lives at my house.
Casual.
Yeah, everybody's got a monk. Everybody's like, you got a monk? I want a monk too. I'm like, I don't got a monk. I sponsor a monk.
That's awesome. Does that work its way into your products in any ways?
Well, I mean, that's the whole, it's, bringing up awareness.
Yeah.
That's the whole teachings in there. There's emptiness and awareness, the infinitude of possibilities linked into the clarity of now. And so a lot of insight comes out of that kind of meditation. And so it's always just bringing things up, and it makes you see more and have a vast range of possibilities that then you focus down into, reality.
Yeah.
And so it does bring things up, and it really speeds up the development, I'll tell you that.
I can tell.
And then you do your clinicals and stuff, but you already kind of saw the end point.
Okay.
And then you prove out everything, you tweak little things, but you get to these like miracle things real fast. And, it's almost too much to even market right. And then people will be like, I thought you just had glutathione. It's like, no, there's this magic product, that magic product. My blood pressure was 150/100. Now we got this magic product that'll keep you down at 180. And, and it's like way more magic than the other ones out there that do that. I haven't even had time to talk about it, but we got like a huge clinical going on that, and then we'll promote that. And so, the challenge for our marketing team is like to get people to know all this stuff that's just rapid fire coming out.
Yeah, you're literally producing too fast for them to market it in a way that people will absorb, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
But, it'll all catch up.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. This was such a wealth of information. You're welcome back anytime.
Anytime I'll come down here.
Yeah,
I'll stop by. Thanks, Nicole.
This podcast was brought to you by Pureform, a comprehensive wellness center in Boca Raton, Florida. The website is pureformhealth.com, or you can find us on Instagram at pureformhealth. Feel free to message us with any questions, and note that you can connect with our providers for consultations over Zoom, from everything from stem cell therapy to hormone replacement therapy and peptide therapy. That's it for this episode of the HealthSpan Collective. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love for you to rate, review, subscribe, and send it to a friend. We'd also love to connect with you on Instagram. Follow the podcast at HealthSpan Collective and me at Nicole J. Doran, and leave us a comment on our latest post letting us know what you'd like us to cover next.